Kristeen has an update after having a breakthrough in clinic. She has found what she calls the sweet spot.
I'm not in survival mode. I'm not having negative thoughts about clinic, but I'm also not having ambitions for clinic. Like, I'm just turning up. And in that kind of neutral place, somewhere in the middle of those two things, I seem to be the most therapeutic version of myself, and I seem to get through clinic much better. That's why I'm calling it the sweet spot.
You can say, this is not the case. That's what we can do with the scientific null hypothesis. With the infinite hypothesis, we can always just keep rolling with this idea that the explanation is because we are inadequate, because we are not enough.
I've had a lot of not enoughs, not thin enough, not beautiful enough, not clever enough.
You're over, you're done at 30, for goodness sake. It's like the worst thing happens to you that society tells you that you're aging. And then it's like you've rose like a phoenix from that. You're like, wait a second, this can't stop me. We actually need to really actively catch ourselves pretending and remind ourselves, wait a second, I don't need to pretend. I don't need to perform. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors.
Hello, my beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, and welcome back to the potty. In today's episode, we are going to hear about a bit of an update on Kristeen's clinic situation, because we know that Kristeen is not the only Dr. Human who doesn't always love clinic, right? Especially all-day clinic. I love a ward round. I love a ward round to break up the day. All-day clinic's it's not my jam. So honor to you. But for all of you guys who also find clinic exhausting or challenging, you find it something that you dread in your day, if you resonated with our episode, it's not a recent episode anymore. We did this great episode on why clinical work is so hard that speaks so much to why clinic is so difficult and draining for most of us, if not all of us. Kristeen has an update after having a breakthrough just yesterday in clinic. She has found what she calls the sweet spot. And so I am so excited to bring this episode to you and hear all about Kristeen. Tell us how to make clinic better.
Oh, I really hope this helps. Do you know, it's something I've just come across, and I'm almost slightly even embarrassed to say I've just come across it. I feel like maybe there's people out there who already have this secret and they're keeping it to themselves maybe, but it's just something that I have never come across. And so I've had a bit of a shift in how I'm showing up at work in the clinical environment, and I wanted to share what I think is happening, so that if you're like me and you haven't quite found that little sweet spot yet, then maybe this will help. So I guess clinic and clinical work has always felt like a mixed bag to me. And I think I have two modes. I have like survival mode and I have thriving mode, but neither of them, I'm realizing, are actually very good for me. So survival mode is, we've all been there. It's the clinic where you get too many patients, you're already running behind, you didn't show up in your best self, you got other stuff going on at home, something else is happening, you're tired, didn't sleep well, something else, there's something going on with you, your cup's not full when you start clinic, and then things just happen, thing after thing after thing, and you're just not having a good clinic. And all the while, you've got this narrative going about, oh, I'm running behind, oh, da-da-da. You know, it doesn't feel very nice to have that clinic experience, and you just cannot wait until it's over. And you hope to goodness that you just did something good to someone, because the whole experience is so negative for you that you're wondering what it is for the patients. It's usually okay for the patients, but you guys know what I mean, right? I'm just being completely honest. Sometimes you have those days. But then on the other side, my goal for clinic has always been like, I want to be a therapeutic human. I want to be therapeutic to the patient just by being there, right? I want to be wrapped up in them. I practice medicine in a very human way. I really try to give the patient an experience where they feel very special and they feel better when they leave the room. Always, always, always. That's always the goal, is to be the most therapeutic version of myself that I can be. And you think, oh, that's great. Like, that sounds really nice. And that should absolutely be the goal. But the problem is that when you're aiming for that, like, sometimes you fall short, or you're only at that at the start until something knocks you off of that and you're no longer that. And then you're disappointed in yourself. Or you just, for whatever reason, no matter how much that's your intention, you just cannot find it within you. You just don't have enough in the cup. So it's double-edged, right? Neither's good. Survival mode's definitely not good. But this kind of aiming to be the most therapeutic version of yourself. And I guess the other thing that happens there with me is if I'm in that mode and I actually am being very therapeutic, previously what that also meant was that I would be therapeutic, but I would be drained after, and I'd be just exhausted, and I just couldn't figure out why I was so tired. But it's just because I gave so much to the patient, just gave all my energy away to the patients, which sounds lovely, except like what you say, Beck, I got all day clinic and I got to have some stamina. And so what I've realized recently, and I'm super keen to unpack this with you, Beck, and just hear your thoughts on this. But what I've realized recently is, almost by accident, to be honest, I haven't really been thinking about it. And I've been turning up to work in a way where I'm just turning up, and my cup is quite full. I'm not in survival mode. I'm not having negative thoughts about clinic, but I'm also not having ambitions for clinic. Like, I'm just turning up. I'm turning up and I'm doing my job. And in that kind of neutral place, somewhere in the middle of those two things, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not trying too hard. And ironically, in that middle place, I seem to be the most therapeutic version of myself. And I seem to get through clinic much better than on either two sides of the spectrum. So that's why I'm calling it the sweet spot, because I've never actually experienced this before. And I guess now that it's in my conscious awareness that is what's happening, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, is this the secret to clinic? And also, how do I stay there? Because I don't actually know how I'm doing it, Beck. So it's just been a bit of a run of me being like this. So what I'm realizing is the sweet spot is just turning up and not having a negative narrative and not having big expectations of myself. And it's just changing my whole game. It's changing how I show up, and it's changing my patient's experience. I'm pretty sure of it, just based on feedback and things. But I'm curious to hear what you would say, Beck, because I mean, like I say, maybe this is obvious, but it wasn't to me, and I just turned 40 and like, I'm only just figuring this out. So I'm just wondering, what do you think about that? And also, how do we get there?
I'm so glad you're bringing this to everybody, because you've just hit the nail on the head with this level of self-awareness that shows us the way that even something like clinic, that we would, pretty convincingly be able to argue is an objectively stressful thing. Like, it is hard for 99.9% of humans, and the ones that it's naturally not hard for, oh my goodness, like, can we interview you? Because we want to know what's going on in your brain. But the quote that comes to mind, the teacher that comes to mind, is Byron Katie. She talks about how all stress comes from thoughts. And when you describe these two different places that you've come to clinic from in the past, I think we can all see how that version of us that's in survival mode, that is then by definition constantly looking for all the things that are going wrong, very attuned to, aware of the fact that we are running behind, the fact that this patient's result isn't back and therefore I can't make a decision about XYZ, the fact that this patient's upset with me, the fact that I am not going to be able to fit in the interpreter session in the time slot allotted that I can see coming up in the day, and the fact that I'm not going to get lunch. We can all see how those thoughts create stress. And I think what's a gift that you've given us today, and incredibly insightful, is the recognition that actually even those thoughts that sound really positive and beautiful and useful and aspirational about wanting to be that doctor that genuinely connects with their patient, that genuinely makes an impact on their day, whether it's through the medical work that you do or whether it's just because of the way that you show up as a doctor. Because I know that so many of you guys who listen to this podcast, you resonate with us because you're probably very heartfelt like us. You probably really care about other humans and connections, and you didn't just go into medicine because you wanted to do something academically challenging. you genuinely wanted to have that connection with people that changes their lives. But these thoughts that sound very, very positive, what they also are expectations that we put on ourselves. As beautiful as they are, they're expectations that, as we've talked about, are not necessarily easy to rise to in the context of clinic, in the limitations of our healthcare system, in the time slot that you were given with that patient that was run over by the patient before, and the fact that you haven't eaten, or maybe you have and it's just a long clinic and you just don't do all day clinic like me. So as beautiful as those thoughts sound, they can also end up being stressful thoughts. And I had a recent experience in my life where I was doing something that I absolutely loved, doing work that I loved so much. And it is overall, usually a very positive experience for me. But with these high expectations that I had, teamed with my awareness that I wasn't meeting the expectations, this positive thing quickly became more painful and more stressful than it needed to be. I just would love to hear more about your experience, Kristeen, this sweet spot where you've landed, where you have subtracted both of these ends of the spectrum of thoughts that were, in this case in particular, not for everybody, but for you, it sounds like they were creating some stress. And of course, some days having the expectations doesn't create stress, and it's actually a wonderful, positive, incredible thing. But you've identified in this case they weren't helping, but instead this sweet spot is. So tell me more.
I'm trying to think how I arrived at the sweet spot, because it's kind of like maybe what happened. I mean, I don't know if this is for sure. Maybe people who are listening, if you've just turned 40, I feel like just turning 40 is like this magical little, I don't know whether it's maybe because before that you think, oh, turning 40 is bad. And then you get to the other side of 40 and you realize, I'm just getting started. Like I'm literally like, I've just figured out how to be myself and how to not care what other people think about me. Therefore, life has just begun. Like, do you know what I mean?
It's like the worst thing happened to you. Oh my gosh, particularly for women, because we all get taught, we get taught that, you're over, you're done at 30, for goodness sake. It's like the worst thing happens to you that society tells you that you're aging. And then it's like you've rose like a phoenix from that. And you're like, wait a second, this can't stop me.
I've also had a lot of experiences in life, griefs and things like that, just things coming up that had to heal. And so I don't know whether it's just because I've come out of some kind of hard stuff that maybe, you kind of let go of other stuff. So I don't know exactly how I got here, which is why I'm super keen to hear if there is a deliberate way to get here, so that if I lose my way, I can come back. But I think there's been this kind of just like an unraveling and a kind of a shedding of like just a previous version of myself, I think. And this current version just happens to be showing up in this way. But what's really interesting is I think over time, and I'm sure everyone listening can resonate with this, is I've had a lot of not enoughs, not thin enough, not beautiful enough, not clever enough, just not, I've got a business. Am I even, what am I doing? Am I enough for that? Like, it's just anything you do in life, I think a lot of women particularly can resonate with just not being enough. And I think that this sweet spot is being enough. Like, I think it's like I'm showing up and I'm just being. I'm not thinking about what the patient's thinking about me. I'm not thinking about what I'm thinking about me. I'm just literally showing up and I'm like doing the consult and I'm using my training, and it's a really beautiful experience, but I'm in the moment. I don't have another narrative. And I didn't realize how much I must have had a narrative before. Like, it's really foreign to me, this place of just being and just actually seeing that just being is actually a really good thing. Like, I can get the job done with much less drama. And I finally feel like maybe I am enough. And I don't have all the answers. Like, I don't know everything about the kidney, and I don't know everything about every single situation on planet Earth that my patient's going to come in with. But for some reason, I've just got this energy of, okay, I am who I am today and I'll figure it out. This has to be enough because this is all I've got. I'm just not consciously doing anything on top of it. There's just no extra drama. So I don't know how I got here, but I want to figure out how all of us can get here.
I think most people don't realize they're like a fish in water with this narrative of not being enough. And all you need to do, we notice this when we look into people's thoughts, and if there's any part of their life that's not going the way that they want it to, if there's any part of their life, that if their clinic is not running on time, for example, so automatically, I want to say, but really layers deep of thoughts, when you interrogate how your mind explains why that bad thing or inadequate thing is happening, we will bring that back to, as you say, because we're not good enough, because of us, because there's something wrong with us. And so we go out in the world, and whenever we're not performing or getting the results that we want to get, our brain's just automatically interpreting that as because we're not enough, because we're not doing good enough, because we need to be better. We just constantly point to ourselves as the problem. And I call this the infinite hypothesis as a way to sort of contrast it with the null hypothesis, because in a null hypothesis, essentially at the end of the day, what you can do with a null hypothesis is you can rule something out. You can say, this is not the case. That's what we can do with the scientific null hypothesis. With the infinite hypothesis, however, we can never ever prove this hypothesis wrong. We can always just keep rolling with this idea that the explanation is because we are inadequate, because we are not enough. And so if you don't break that cycle like you have, then it will just continue for the rest of your life because you will never prove it wrong. And, you think about how you behave from that perspective of believing I'm not enough. You find all the logical, believable explanations that fit that belief system. Oh, it's because I should have prepared this more. I don't have this piece of knowledge and that slowed me down. I didn't, control this conversation with the patient. I didn't cut it off and control it early enough because I'm not professional enough or whatever. All the reasons to back up why you're not good enough. You can see how that would create an incredibly stressful clinic. On the other side, when you believe that you are enough, when you even just stop asking that question, stop believing or trying to disprove that infinite hypothesis, your brain can focus on anything else in the situation, because now you're not the problem that needs to be fixed. When you're the problem that needs to be fixed, that's all your brain's going to focus on, and it's just going to go into self-criticism and self-judgment and probably just trying to make you do more work and better. So when you say, you're able to actually believe in the moment, whether it's believing in the moment that you're enough, or whether it's just not entertaining this question, this hypothesis that you're not enough, now you can be in the present. Now you can just be in the moment, because you don't have to be watching your back and checking for what you need to fix and correct because you're the problem. Suddenly, life is just life. The day is the day. And as problems come up, it's not some kind of attack on yourself. It's not that you need to go and be the savior and fix everything. You just take each problem as it comes and you just solve each problem. I really appreciate this recognition of the not enoughness in terms of being the core issue here. The way that when we stop making ourselves the problem, now we can stop trying to fix ourselves in the moment, and we can just be present with what is. It takes work to get to the point that you've gotten to with it. But for anybody listening who wants to feel that neutrality, that ease in their day, then I'd highly encourage you to go looking in your mind for this narrative, because it is something that the world teaches us, as you were saying, Kristeen, indirectly. It teaches us that, we were just talking about aging. Nobody ever explicitly said to us probably that, some people literally say that women expire up to 30 and horrific things like that. But all of us, and most of us, can laugh that off. However, think about the implicit messaging that comes with all of this anti-aging industry. We're saying aging isn't okay. This is just one little example of how the world teaches us that we're not enough, suggests that we need to change ourselves. It feeds into this infinite hypothesis that you were the problem, if you just fixed these things about yourself, if you just became enough, then everything would be okay.
And do you know what's really interesting just speaking to you now is like this not enough thing, although I've had it in, just like relationships and self-image stuff and all that stuff. I've had it like top of consciousness. We were actually talking about this the other day, Beck and I were out for a walk, and I was talking about how much time I used to spend on like checking how much fat I had on my body. This is Kristeen in her 20s. Like whenever I got a moment, I'd be like chub checking, I would call it. like hours of my day, cognitive load, right? So there's some things like that where it's such an obvious not enough. Like I don't feel thin enough is a great example of something I've definitely experienced in my life, right? And then it's been so obvious to me, but this particular one, I didn't know that I didn't feel enough. I just knew that I either felt terrible in surviving or I was trying hard. I was overdoing it. I was overcompensating, trying to be the most therapeutic individual because ultimately I mustn't have felt enough, but I didn't know that that was the root of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
in that moment when you're saying you want to be the most therapeutic vessel, you're also saying that you're not already a therapeutic vessel. And what I know right now is, wait a second, I am by default, in my default mode, that person for my patients. And can you just say, how much affirmation did you get of that week? Because it was just like, again, you were just aware of it, and it was again and again and again and again without trying to be the therapeutic vessel.
Well, this is how this came up, because it's not just in that. There's lots of different parts of my life where I just feel like the universe is sending me lots of signals that things are going okay and you're on the right track, and just kind of giving me affirmations. I had like a clinic within the last week where 4 separate people said to me something to the effect of, I always feel so much better when I come here. I feel better when I leave than when I came. And, these people have chronic kidney disease. It's not like they've got like the happiest little health experiences, but, and I don't mean to make that about myself. I guess the thing that was the epiphany to me is they were saying that, and so many of them said it in a row that it made me really pay attention to like, well, what am I doing today? And then I realized, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not trying to be therapeutic. Whereas, that's what surprised me. And that's what made me really look in and be like, what is this space that I'm in that I don't feel like I'm overcomplicating things? I am being the therapeutic vessel in the moment.
It implies that you need to be thinking about them and consumed by them and totally focused on them to be of service to them. And what you're saying is, actually, wait a minute, if I just show up as myself, because you've got it built into your bones that you're there to serve them. And it's like, it's just a lie that you need to go above and beyond that. It's a lie that we need to be performative. I've seen different doctors over the time with my pregnancy, and I've had this experience with a doctor who I completely adore. And also I noticed that she's just always laughing, which is a lovely thing. And also, I can't help but notice that she's laughing and smiling at times that aren't necessarily, being prompted by genuine laughter or humor or joy even. It's almost like it feels like a little bit of a mask. And I never know this for sure, but it's just something that I've noticed. I'm like, oh. And I wonder for her if she's doing that to create comfort for us and create this happy, beautiful, lovely space for us. And if that comes naturally to her, that's incredible. I just don't meet many humans who are very natural in terms of constantly laughing throughout, very busy clinics and things all day, and they're constantly smiling. And I just wonder, she's so brilliant. And I wish she felt like she could just be herself and didn't need to do what everybody tells women to do, which is just smile more to make everybody, feel comfortable and happy. We just are in our most authentic selves. We are constantly serving people. We just had a bit of a juicy episode that we would highly encourage you to listen to about lying and instead choosing authenticity. And in particular about what an honourable thing it is, a respectful thing it is to do for other people, to be authentic in that moment. It's not only respectful and honourable to do for other people, but here we're saying it is for you as well. It's you saying, by not pretending, it's you saying, I am enough. Wait a second. And so many of us, after all our training over our lifetime that we're not enough, all that implicit and explicit messaging, we actually need to really actively catch ourselves pretending and remind ourselves, wait a second, I don't need to pretend. I don't need to perform. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. And I think we need to do it enough to the point that we start to build the evidence base for it, because we do not have an evidence base for it to convince ourselves. You've just had this beautiful week of self-awareness where you chose to stop indulging in that I'm not enough story. You chose to stop performing and pretending, and you chose to be authentic. And because of that, only because you chose to stop doing it, were you able to get all this feedback of like, wait a second, I am enough. I am enough just as I am, even without that smile plastered on my face or without holding myself to this standard. I just am enough. And it gives me, chills to think that people's lives can just continue never getting that evidence, never understanding that they were always enough because they'd never created that opportunity to see the evidence.
Yeah. I think it's such a beautiful thing to just bring to the top of your conscious mind. And that was definitely our goal with this episode, was really just to, like I say, I feel like it's been a total accident for me. I feel deliberate. But I think getting that feedback, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I knew we had to talk about it today. It's like someone needs to hear this. And so maybe you don't have to wait till you're 40. Maybe you can be enough right now because you are enough, and that's the truth. Because enoughness is nothing to do with anything like what med school you went to, what level of training you are, what job you're in, what you actually know. Your ability to serve the patient or do what you're doing in the moment has very little to do. We talked about this before in the podcast as well. A lot of what I do in clinic is very human, and it's just about being a human. Do you know what I mean? So you definitely are enough, but it's just about like reframing it and really like what you're saying, Beck. If you have one of these narratives going, and I had no idea I had this narrative for the longest time in clinic, it's just like maybe if you just know about it, it helps you just to dissolve it, which is so powerful.
Absolutely. Know about it, and also dare to take some action towards it. Dare to not plaster on that smile or try and be over the top performative. Take that dare for yourself so that you can create the evidence to show you something else is possible, right? So use this episode for awareness, and then do us the greatest honor and go and test this hypothesis in your world. Do you really need to perform, be more, be different to serve your patients? Do you really need to perform, be more in order for your friends and loved ones to enjoy your company? Just do a little test in one of these areas and report back.
And thank you so much for listening. Be sure to let us know how you go in the comments below. Thank you for being here. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there.